welcome back. It's the show called Running Toward Life. Join 11-time Western States endurance run finisher, sports journalist, and author John Trent as he talks with ultra runners and the race directors and members of this ever-growing, ever-running community. Welcome back, John.
It's good to be back. Welcome, everybody. This edition of Running Towards Life is one that I'm excited about. We have a really special guest today. George Ruiz is for many years has been the race director of the Tahoe Rim Trail endurance runs, which includes the 100-miler there, which is one of the top events not only in the country, but it's a destination race where there's folks from all over the world who come and run George's race. And in addition to that, George himself is a veteran ultra runner. His time in the sport goes back at least a couple of decades, if not maybe a little bit more than that. He's done the tough races. He's experienced all the tough things that we experience out there. And he's always able to bring about a sense of community and togetherness with everything that he does. So I'm really, really honored to have George with us today. George, welcome.
Hi, John, and thank you for those kind words.
Yeah, George, thanks for being on Running Toward Life. And, one of the things that I wanted to talk to you at the beginning is just, how you got involved. I mean, you've led an active life. I mean, if anybody knows you, they know that motorsports are a big part of your life. Skiing is a big part of your life. How did you venture out into the world of ultras, and how did you kind of eventually discover, like, yeah, this is my tribe?
Well, like so many ultra runners, I started off on the roads just like everyone else. It seems like actually in my 30s, I was really active riding motorcycles, and if anybody knows anything about motocross and that sort of thing, those are some of the fittest athletes on the planet. And I just needed to get in better shape. And so I started running around the block and started running around 2 blocks. And, finally it turned into a mile, and a mile turned into 2 miles. And then I entered a local 5K and thought that was kind of fun, to have some competition. And it just went from, 5K to 10K to half marathon, and just basically didn't stop until it was 100 miles. So that's kind of how it started. As far as the ultra running, I had done several marathons, and finally when I qualified for Boston and did Boston, I had a couple of friends that live over in that Newcastle area, and they wanted to do Way Too Cool, and I didn't know anything about it, just thought it was a cool name for a race. And so I started running on dirt for the very first time to train for that. Ironically, they both got hurt, and I was the only one that did it. And that was the start of ultra running.
Yeah, George, and what's interesting is as you got into it, what I've always admired about you is you don't shy away from the tough races, right? I mean, if you look at your athletic resume, it's in terms of ultras, you've gone and done the tough races over the years. What was it about sort of the more challenging hundreds out there that really drew you into it? Because I mean, if you look at that, I mean, it's pretty remarkable. There's not a lot of 100-milers around the neighborhood type of stuff that you did. You were in big mountains, in challenging environments. That something about that must have really spoke to you.
Well, I think mainly, I mean, I know that I wasn't a super fast runner, so I didn't have the leg speed to be competitive in a faster 100-miler. So basically, the harder the mountain race was, the better off I was. It just was more in my wheelhouse, and the guys that I was training with at that time were all into that, and it just made sense to do all the big tough ones.
Which they're all really great finishes, but which one in particular stands out as one that you're most proud of?
Well, UTMB was probably the one of the grandest moments, finish line moments of any ultra runner's career. But to be honest, the very first Wasatch that I did um, was the best executed 100 miler that I did out of them all. Um, I had a game plan, and I mean, I knew that I needed to be in order to break 30 hours, I needed to be at Brighton at 1 o'clock, and I think I was there at 1:01 in the morning. I mean, I was
Mm.
that on it, and um, and I had gas at the tank at the end.
Mm.
And of course, I was 2 decades younger, and I was still training like a road marathoner. And I think that's a key thing, because I think so many ultra runners just start running long, 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 and then they forget how to run fast. And yeah, the very first Wasatch is the best moment of my ultra running.
I find that interesting just because I love Wasatch. As you know, I've struggled to the times I've run it there. I've never finished it. I greatly admire folks that do. So for those who are listening here, Wasatch is in the mountains of Utah. It's extremely challenging. George, could you kind of paint a picture for folks about what it's like, how difficult it is to run Wasatch in terms of what the runners might experience, and also it's one of the oldest 100 milers in North America, trail ultra 100 milers in the country, and it has sort of an old school vibe to it as well.
Well, it's very old school. From the race director down, um, it starts in Bountiful, Utah, which is just north of Salt Lake City. And from there, you start off with a 4,000 foot climb, and you get up on the ridge line, and you basically run a ridge line all the way to the town of Midway. And I know that very first year, when I got to Lamb's Canyon, which at that time I think was at 51 or 52 miles or something like that. Rhonda, my wife, asked me how I was feeling, and I said that was the toughest 50 miler I'd ever done. And because that was the first time on that course, I didn't know that the toughest part of the course was still yet to come. And it is a course that grinds you up and chews you up and spits you out. It takes place in early September, so it could have high daytime heats, but it could have freezing cold temperatures at night. And it has, like, I don't know, 26,000 feet of elevation gain and similar elevation loss. There's races that have more, but I don't know what it is about that race, but that race beat me up worse than any other race, and I did it multiple times. But it just beats you up, and it's cumulative, and it ends. It never stops coming at you, and the last 25 miles are very difficult, and it's a very difficult downhill finish to get there.
And they always talk about the rocks at Wasatch, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it makes when people ask me about the trail for my race here around Tahoe, I say it's a walk in the park, because our trails are so buff and nice. And I've done races like Wasatch where you're just running on cobbled rock constantly, and your feet hurt so bad. So yes, there's plenty of rock in the Wasatch Mountains.
George, can you talk a little bit about sort of the relationships and friendships that people find as they're running these races? I mean, I think people just sort of, are drawn to you. You're a very friendly person. It's easy to talk to you. I mean, so maybe it just kind of happens naturally, but really more than most sports, it feels like there's an element of, like, we're in this together. Let's kind of run for a while together. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, sure. The camaraderie aspect of ultra running I think, is what sucks people in so fast to the sport. You can come across a total stranger and be hiking up a long mountain that takes an hour and a half to get up there, and you just basically spill your soul to that person and them to you. And the next thing you know, you're the best of friends. And many of those friendships last, for as long as you're involved, as long as you'd like it to last. I've been in touch with people for the last 20 years that I met early in my ultra running career, you being one of them, of course. And I actually met you. I don't know if you remember, but I remember you were already a big time sports writer for the Reno Gazette Journal, and I was a small time sports writer for the Nevada Appeal, which is a much smaller publication in Carson City. And I was covering a track meet at Carson High, and felt so privileged to meet John Trent. And that was before I even started running on dirt or anything. So anyway, um, we go back a long ways.
We do. And you know what I always loved about you as a sports writer, just talking shop for a second was, you weren't ever afraid to get in there and ask the questions, right? Whether, sometimes it'd be tough questions, sometimes it'd be easy questions. In sports writing, it's tough to ask the tough questions. And I remember, covering basketball games, and there was a particular really successful high school girls basketball coach who was a formidable presence. But you'd go in there and ask the tough questions, and I'd kind of hide behind you, because it was interesting to watch that, and you weren't afraid to do that at all. I always admired that about you.
I'm pretty sure I know which coach you're talking about. And the advantage I had was I actually became pretty good friends with her. So it wasn't too hard to ask the tough questions. Although she was a tough lady. I mean, she definitely had a game face on before, during, and after a game.
A very formidable presence. But yeah, and not surprising to me that eventually you became her friend, because George, that's the thing. I mean, you become everybody's friend, and that's what I think is so great. And I think really the manifestation of that is the race that you serve as the race director of. I know, it started out, a little bit before you, but you quickly got involved with it. And now it's this sort of celebration that, when people go out, they know they're in for a challenge, because this is a George Ruiz race, where it's challenging. But the runner experience, the care of the runners is just phenomenal. Can you talk a little bit about, your baby, the Tahoe Rim Trail endurance runs, and what they mean to you?
Yeah. Well, the Tahoe Mountain Miler Running Club started in South Lake Tahoe. And David Cotter and Kevin Bigley are the two gentlemen that started off the Tahoe Rim Trail endurance runs. And it started off as a 50K and a 50 mile. And I did the very first race running. I did all of the distances. So I was always involved in the running aspect, but also the volunteering aspect at the race. And then in 2006, while working the aid station at Hunter Lake for the Silver State 50-50, I was already actively doing hundreds, and I said, I said to these two guys, I said, we need to add a 100-mile, because if we don't, somebody's coming to Tahoe and add a 100-miler, and that should be us. So the very next year was the Tahoe 100, and so it wasn't long after that I became the assistant race director for David Cotter. And he was kind of reaching burnout phase, and so I was getting more and more and more active, where I was pretty much doing the whole thing. So when he decided to fold up and move to Hawaii, I was delighted to take over the race, because I had specific goals and ideas what I was going to change about the aid stations, the feel of the race, everything. And I probably rubbed a few people the wrong way that were long timers there, because I did come in and change everything immediately. But I'm pretty proud of the fact that, because I was an active 100-mile runner at the time, I knew exactly what runners needed, wanted, and craved, and I think I gave that to them. And the aid station captains that came with me really embraced their aid stations and built villages out in the middle of the backcountry, and really made it a really super fun cohesive environment. We've always been a nonprofit race, and we still are. And so I like to think that our race does not have a corporate feel to it, which I think is good. Not that I'm down on corporate races, because there's a lot of the great ones, but there's something about a homespun race, and it makes everyone feel welcome and like they're coming home to the race. So not only do we get runners from all over the world, but we get people that do the race year after year after year. It's just because it's their favorite event of the year. So I'm really proud of that. And also one of the big goals I had was to move the race from Spooner Lake State Park in the Nevada side of Lake Tahoe down to Carson City. So I did that in 2021, and it's been a great move. It made the course much more difficult, but I think it made it a lot more interesting, and it's truly a world-class mountain course now, with the added elevation gain and loss. So anyway.
Yeah, it's interesting how the race has gotten harder, but people don't complain about it to you.
Yeah, that's true. I really thought that the 4,000-foot climb to start off with would garner a lot of complaints, and I haven't heard any complaints about that. What I was getting complaints about was the temporary Jeep road we were using to get back into Carson City. And it's funny, I got a little funny story about that. When I was pacing, Kevin Bigley, in fact, one of the original race directors at Wasatch a couple years ago, the year that Katie did her Grand Slam, we were running on that terrible railroad grade around that reservoir to get to the finish line, and it seemed like it went forever. Every time we went around a bend, there was like another mile you could see. We were like, we're never going to get there, And I was complaining out loud, and this guy that was pacing another runner in front of me turns around and he said, "I just did your race a couple of months ago, and this is exactly what your race felt like at the finish." And I said, "Noted." I guarantee you at first opportunity, it will change. And so this year it's changing, which I'm very, very excited about. So, yeah.
I could keep asking you a ton of questions. I have time for about one more question here, George. So I'm just curious, at the end of the day, what does it mean to you? What do you feel you get out of your involvement, your organization, all the blood, sweat, toil, and tears that you put into your event? What at the end of the day kind of is the takeaway for you?
I think the takeaway is the runners that come and do the event really love it. They got a great trail experience with unbelievable beauty, 2,000 feet above Lake Tahoe. And I love my volunteer team. I've had the same group of volunteers, key volunteers, aid station captains, registration person, volunteer person, the entire time that's with me. I tell them now that they can't leave until I'm done because we're a team. And I love the team aspect. And when it all comes together, as stressful as it is, it's a beautiful thing to watch and see unfold, and to see the elation of the runners come through the finisher line is really a cool thing to experience.
Yeah, George, everything that you're involved with, people feel that, they feel you, they know that you're passionate about what you do, and more importantly, you care about the people that are involved. I mean, you're one of the best people I've ever run across, just because maybe you do, but I've never seen you lose your temper. I've never seen you lose your composure. You're always at your best when you're around people. And that's something for me that I always try to remind myself as I'm kind of coming apart sometimes, to be more like George, and as a great race director. So, I just wanted to thank you again for being part of this. I want to wish you the best of luck this year. I mean, it's going to be a challenging year with snow and the like up at your event, but I know you're going to do a great job with it.
I appreciate that, John. And I look forward to having you help us out again.
Absolutely, George. Thank you so much for being here. And to everybody, we'll see you on the trails.
Okay. Thanks.
Well, there you have it. One more reason to follow us as we keep running toward life with John Trent. Right here in Orange County's only community radio station, OC Talk Radio, streaming live from our studio here at the University of California, Irvine's Beale Applied Innovation Center.